Today we're taking a look at some practice questions that deal with fractions and reciprocals. These are questions like you could expect from the ACT. And let's take a look at the first question. Arrange the following fractions in decreasing order, and we're given this set of values here. So we need to pay attention. It says arrange the following fractions in decreasing order. So that's going to be from the greatest down to the least. So that's what we're looking at. Now there's several different ways you can approach a question like this. Since we have our multiple choice options over here, we could go through each one of these multiple choice options and determine if these are true statements, A through E. Or we could take our data set here and determine what is the order from greatest to least. I think I might start with that. If you have watched the video where we talked about fractions, we talked about putting everything in a common denominator. That's usually the easiest way. So that's the method I'm going to look at first here. And when I look at these values with the denominator of a 6, a 3, a 3, a 2, and a 4, I know that the common denominator of these 5 values is a 12. So I could put all of these with a denominator of 12, and that's what I'm going to look at doing. So I'm going to write all these out with a common denominator of 12, so then it'll be easier for me to compare. So when I look at 5, 6, I'll say 6 goes into 12 2 times, and 2 times 5 is 10. So that gives me 10 twelfths is the same as 5 sixths. For 1/3, 3 goes into 12 4, and 4 times 1 is 4, giving me 4 twelfths. So for 7/3, 3 goes into 12 4, and 4 times 7 is 28. For 5 halves, 2 goes into 12 6, and 6 times 5 is 30, for 30 twelfths. And for 5/4, 4 goes into 12 3, and 3 times 5 is 15. So now when I have fractions with the same denominator, they each have a denominator of 12, the value, the numerator that's the greatest, is going to give us the greatest fraction. So I'm going to look for the greatest, which was 30 twelfths, but that was the same as 5 halves. So 5 halves is going to be my largest fraction. One thing I might want to do right here, we've talked about before that we don't always have to work a problem out to completion. We just have to get to the right answer from our multiple choices. So I already know of these 5 values that 5 halves is the largest value. I can go ahead and look in my answer choices, and anywhere 5 halves is not the largest value, that's going to be a wrong choice. I'm not going to choose that. Now it still leaves me with 3 different ones, so I've got to keep going. Next to 30 twelfths is going to be 28 twelfths. So 28 twelfths is equivalent to 7/3. So that puts 7/3 second. So again, I'm going to go ahead and try to see, can I eliminate some choices? And I can eliminate E. I still have B and C hanging strong, and it looks like we're going to have to go a couple, at least 2 more, until we get the distinguishing factor right here. Okay, so it really already tells us that 5/4 is next, but we knew that from looking at our choices right here. 15 twelfths, which is the same as 5/4. That's next. And then we look here, our 10 twelfths is next, which is the same as 5 sixths. So that's going to be answer choice C, puts 5 6 next, and then we finish up with 1/3. So this is one way that you can work the problem. You could also have plugged these values into your calculator, and if it was easier for you to determine from a decimal point of view what these values are and then order them, that's okay as well. So with this second question, we're given that a $250,000 house is assessed at 1/5 of its value. The yearly tax rate is $3.20 per 100 of assessed value. What is the yearly tax on this property? So I like to encourage my students to be familiar with typical terms that may be used for problems like this. So in this particular case, we're looking at property tax. So just to have a general idea of how property tax works. This uses a fraction here, this 1/5. That's what we're interested in with respect to fractions, but it does come into play with some other things. So We want to know what the yearly tax on this property is. They tell us that they are taxed $3.20 per hundred of assessed value. So first we need to know what is the assessed value, and we get that from the first sentence. A $250,000 house is assessed at 1/5 of its value. We need to take $250,000 and find 1/5 of that. You could just plug that into your calculator. If you can easily divide there by the 5, that's what we end up doing with the fraction, because 5 goes into 250,000 50,000 times. So this is our assessed value, what we're looking at, and we got that directly from the first sentence. It gave us the definition of that. We were given the definition of the assessed value. But now it tells us if the yearly rate is $3.20 per hundred of assessed value. So we have to take this $50,000 per 100. So how many 100s are in 50,000? Again, you can do this by hand or plug it into your calculator. You're going to get 500. So you're going to be taxed then $3.20 for this $500 amount. And when you multiply that by hand or with your calculator, we get 1,600, which is answer choice G. Okay, now we're going to pull this up and take a look at the last two problems. Two numbers, x and y, are reciprocals. Which expression is always true? So here's another hint we have. When we see questions that have which all of our questions, of course, the answer is one of the multiple choice. But when you see a question that uses the word which, that's really a signal to you that it's almost easier. You're gonna have to take a look at the answer choices versus like the problem above. We began working it out and then we could find our answer that matched in the answer choices. Here we almost want to begin with what we're given in A through E or F through K, whatever the choice may be, and use that to help us get the answers. So we're given two numbers, x and y, two variables, and it says they are reciprocals. So one thing that I could do, because I'm probably going to have to test out these different things here with my choices A through E, I could give an example of what x and y would be. If I say x is 5, we know that x and y are reciprocals, so the reciprocal of 5 is 1/5. So I know if x is 5, y is 1/5. And this is just an example that I've come up with. Okay, so now we can evaluate and they want to know which expression is always true. So this is in all cases always true. So if I just begin with A, that looks like one that I could try that would be rather simple to verify. It says that x times y is 1. And so x times y is 5 times 1/5, and that is equal to 1. When we multiply across, this is the same as 5 over 1. We multiply across the numerator and across the denominator, and we get 5 over 5, which simplifies to 1. So yes, that's true. Always true. And that becomes our answer. It is answer choice A. If you wanted to look at the other options here, you could. If we look at answer choice B, x minus y is 0. Well, we have 5 minus 1/5. That is not equal to 0, so that one's out. X over y is 1. Well, 5 over 1/5. If you'll remember what we talked about with dividing fractions, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the second one, the value on the bottom here, we get the reciprocal of that. That turns out to be 25 over 1. That's not equal to 1. And then D choice, we'll look at D over here. It says x plus y, 5 plus 1/5 is equal to -1. No, that's not true either. And E says x to the y, so 5 to the 1/5. That's the same as, when we get into radicals, we'll review that to be the 5th root of 5, which is not equal to 1. So E is out as well. So that makes answer choice A, which we've already proved to be true, is the only answer that is always true. Now let's take a look at question number 4. If A and B are reciprocals and 0 is less than A is less than 1, then B must be what? Okay, so first we know A and B are reciprocals, but it gives us a little bit more information about A right here. And it says A falls between 0 and 1. So when you think about that, what values are between 0 and 1? Fractions, right? Fractional values. I could say A is equal to 1/2. That would fall in there. Or A could be equal to 2/3. Or A could be equal to 5/8. Any fractional value that is between 0 and 1. So we're talking about a fraction. These are also proper fractions. They're not improper. Remember, improper fractions are going to be greater than 1 because the numerator is greater than the denominator. And we're not talking about any negative numbers here because we're greater than 0. So if we know this to be the case for A, then what about B? So let's take a look. When we look at any of these and we find the reciprocal, B in this case would be 2/1, which is 2. In this case, B would be 3/2, which is equal to 1 1/2, or 1.5. In this case, B is equal to 8/5, which is 1 3/5. So all these values have turned to be what we just said, improper fractions. The numerator is greater than the denominator. So when we look at that, which one of these choices, F through K, describes that? Well, less than -1, no, because we're not even involved with negative numbers. Between -1 and 0, again, no negative numbers. Equal to 0, no, we didn't even have any options like that. Between 0 and 1, that would make them fractions, which is what A is. This is what A is. So J's out. Greater than 1. Yes, all these values. 2 is greater than 1. 1 1/2 is greater than 1. 1 3/5 is greater than 1. K is our answer choice because we went from a proper fraction to its reciprocal being an improper fraction, which makes it greater than 1. Answer choice K.